Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming out. You have some information, a lot of information, about jobs, exporting jobs out of the state and out of the United States as a whole. Also, the reformation or the re-strengthening of the unions. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as part of what I want to do in Congress, there is a top 4 on my list, and one of them is to bring the jobs back from overseas and to strengthen the unions, each of which is dependent on the other. The 1% has done some really bad things to this country over the last 60 or 70 years. It started with Section 14B of Taft-Hartley, which allowed right to workshops, which means that you could go to work there and the other people in the union would lobby for your or negotiate for your salaries and your benefits and everything, but you wouldn't have to pay them. You could work there anyway. Allowing that crippled the unions. That was under Truman, I believe. And then in the late 70s, deregulation started. And I have some notes.
Okay.
And railroads in 76 and 80, airlines in 78, and trucking in 1980. Transportation is very capital intensive, and so it was protected during the Depression to keep these outfits from going bankrupt and thus destroying capital and destroying jobs. Once we deregulated under Carter and then under Reagan, they were not protected. The next thing you saw was airlines going under, and over and over again. And this crippled the airline unions and destroyed the salaries and the benefits that many of the airline unions were receiving. They still have work actions from time to time, but they're not nearly as strong as they used to be. Then along came Ronnie Reagan with the PATCO, the air traffic controller strike, and he fired all those people. That's the point where most union members seem to point at as being the start of the decline of the unions, but it was before that. With the unions declining from, I understand, around 30% down to its current 11%, they've become fair game for various politicians like Scott Walker out of Wisconsin, who went after the unions and managed to, with the Koch money, managed to stave off a recall. And the result of that is the union membership in Wisconsin for government unions has dropped in half, and they've been pretty much damaged by it. All over the country, union membership is waning, and this is really bad for all the rest of us because unions are what built the middle class. Unions are what, even for the non-union people, got us 8-hour days and vacations and health care and pensions. I used to work at the phone company. Every time the phone company unions would get a raise, I would get a raise. Doesn't take too long to figure it out that they're very important to me. Well, it's gotten worse since then. Manufacturing, which has been exported by the 1%, in great quantities, where we have lost most of our ability to manufacture these many things. Manufacturing used to be what brought economies back after each recession. Not so after the recession in 2008. What's come back now are minimum wage jobs, Walmart and flipping hamburgers, that kind of stuff. And many of the people who have gone back to work are still hurting because they're not making enough money to get by. What I would like to see is jobs come back to this country and strengthen the unions. The unions need to be strong so they can advocate for it. And the Democrats need to recognize this because the unions, which were the fundamental force in the Democratic Party for so long, are vastly weakened, and we need to re-strengthen them and get these jobs back. I've been collecting ways to do it from wherever I could steal them, pages of them.
You say steal them, but you go door to door talking to people. Even though you did not win the election a couple years ago, you're still walking your district, and you continue to do that even after the election. I understand maybe there might be a candidacy in the future for you.
Well, I will be on the ballot next June, God willing. I had knocked on the doors of 31,417 voters up until June a year ago, and now I'm up to 38,948. There's 185,000 people on my list that I've targeted. Those are Democrats, Independents, Green Party, and Peace and Freedom. I think I have something for every one of those. Independents traditionally will vote Democrat 80% of the time if they give them a reason to. Now, 185,000 people, compare that with how many votes Jeff Denham got last November when he won. He got 110,000 votes. So it's out there if we go after him, and if we present a platform that these people will recognize as being in their interest. Now, Jose Hernandez got 98,000 votes a year ago in November, which was not enough to win because, of course, Jeff got more. But that was more than all the votes put together in the primary. So Jose did a great job, but it needed to be just a little greater. And he was an excellent candidate, and I'm really sorry that he's not going to run again because I voted for him. Not in the primary, but in the general. So with 185,000 votes out there, obviously the goal is to do the outreach, to do the get out the vote actions, and to present to them a platform that speaks to their needs. And one of those needs is good jobs here in this country. And they're out there because we sent them out of the country. We can get them back. There are ways.
Well, that's what I was going to refer to here. I understand that you gather data from the people that you knock on the doors to. You actually go in and talk to them.
Yes.
And they give you suggestions and ideas.
Yes.
And I'm very thankful that after the election cycle was over, you continued to do that.
Okay.
You continued to talk to people out there and find out kind of the pulse of what's going on. So what do they say? Are they fed up with being unemployed?
Yes, they are. One suggestion I got from a gentleman, Tracy, who's in the telecom industry, was that we put an excise tax on every customer service call that's routed out of this country in order to balance the attractiveness of it and bring all those jobs back. We don't have to bring them all back at once, but we don't want a Smoot-Hawley kind of thing, which made the Great Depression deeper. But instead of it's over here, if we bring it back to just about here, so the jobs trickle back in rather than flowing out, which is what they're doing, we can strengthen these jobs now. And those customer service jobs were good jobs in this country, and they sent them to other places where people spoke English of various quality. And the people who sent them out made a lot of money off of that. Well, there ought to be an excise tax to equalize that. So if the person in charge decides to send those jobs out of the country, it ought to be zero benefit for them. It ought to be equal here and in India.
Well, don't you think if the company is charged an excise tax for every call that's routed outside the country, don't you think that they will pass on that tax to the consumer? And then ultimately we're paying a higher price for something that is lesser quality than we had 5 years ago.
You'll be paying a higher price, but you'll also have a job in customer service here. Start these things slowly and see what happens.
Is that one of your constituents?
That's probably my wife.
Okay, go ahead and shut off your phone. So while he's taking call on line 1, I will go ahead and hold this up for him. Okay, so this is Michael Barkley, and this is his phone number. And if you'd like to call him, he's got his phone on, 823-4817. So we do take calls here at the studio, and if they want to flash the number up on the screen, thanks, Sargon. If you want to put the number up on the screen and you'd like to interact with anyone here during the show, give us a call. Okay, so.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
You're supposed to turn the phone off before you go on the air.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. At least we know that you have your phone on you, and this is your current phone number that we can reach you at. So,
of all the ways, my favorite came out of the nonsense with the Bay Bridge. A Chinese steel company bid lower than cost for that steel, and we've had problems with it ever since. They've come in, $5-6 billion over cost, and 2 years late. Oregon Steel bid on that. It was Dylan Radigan had the president of Oregon Steel on air a couple of years ago talking about it. If we had legislation that said for every contract, federal, state, or local, including no bid contracts, that a company with a higher percentage of domestic labor, parts, materials could bump the low bidder, then this nonsense with the Bay Bridge would not have happened. Oregon Steel would have got that job. The Bay Bridge would have been done 2 years ago and not be over the the bid price.
Do you think it's really that simple? Do you think it's just, we need to do this and this and this, and then, if we do A, B, and C, D will happen? Or do you think that there's other intricacies involved in this? I mean, bigger money on the other side that maybe we can't see for those low bid jobs?
It's never easy. That's one that I think that the domestic manufacturers would like. If we can do this one and that one and that one, then this meter can come back towards the middle. One aspect that we have had, one problem we've had, is that our environmental regulations, which are important, have pretty much prohibited the development of a rare earths facility in the Mojave Desert. Now, rare earths are essential for electronics manufacturing, and at the moment, China has pretty much a monopoly on rare earths from Inner Mongolia. So all the manufacturing we want to do with for electronics, we have to go get the rare earths from them in order to do it. I do not know, and I've heard, and I forget, I have to keep looking things up. I don't know exactly what it is in the manufacturing process that the rare earths are used for, but they're essential. Now, we have this large deposit in the Mojave Desert. I believe that we as a country and we as a state should consider subsidizing the environmental cost of that property so that the rare earths will be insourced and we can resume our own electronics manufacturing. These things come step, this one, that one, that one. I talked to a fellow in Ripon a year ago. He's a manufacturing engineer. He said that for a while, we had lost so much manufacturing capacity that we were unable to build transformers, the large transformers. So our electrical grid was completely dependent on imports. He said, now another plant has opened up domestically, but we are so thin on so many aspects of our domestic manufacturing capability that should there be an interruption in the supply chain, we would be like Japan in World War II facing cutoff of the oil, which is why they went to war.
Well, I have a question kind of backing up just a minute or two about the resources. You were talking about the resources that we have in the Mojave Desert. Here in the Central Valley, we have water, and around the state, there's other resources in other counties. Do you think that we are using our resources wisely? Or there's even talk about fracking and drilling. Do you think that we have more resources available to us that we have not mined yet?
Obviously, with the fracking boom, we've suddenly become less dependent on foreign oil. So there's a trade-off there. I don't want the water contaminated, but I'm fairly pleased to see that we've backed off on the heavy imports of petroleum products that we were because of the availability of through fracking. So I'm still listening to both sides on that. All of the people who send me email about how terrible fracking is, I agree with them. So let's suspend the Halliburton rule, which means they don't have to tell you what's in it. So we ought to know what's in it. And let's take another look at it and figure out how to do it safely.
What do you think about our resources? Like I was saying about the water here in the Central Valley and those other resources down in the Mojave Desert. Do you think that we are not using those or utilizing them to the best of our ability here? And if so, why?
With the Mojave Desert, the rare earths problem is the cost that the environmental controls, which are important, adds to and makes it easier to import it from Mongolia. So we need to help balance it with federal and state subsidies to that enterprise. With the Central Valley, with the water, we have other problems, which is one of the four on my big list. We have a serious flooding problem in the Central Valley that most people don't know about. In 1861-62, there was a biblical flood here. It produced a lake in the Central Valley which was an average of 20 miles wide and up to 60 miles wide and 300 miles long. We have moved 1.5 million people into the footprint of that flood since then because we forget. Every levee that was in existence at the time broke, and some multiple times. Those were all around Sacramento. And they had built decent levees after 1851, after those floods. It is possible to cure that with additional storage. On my website, I have a page I've been collecting information about that flood, links and so on, plus a page that sets out a solution. And that will be 32 million acre-feet of additional storage with 3 alternate conveyances. If we did that, we would have enough water for our needs for the foreseeable future. There would be no more tunnels problem in the Delta. There would be no more peripheral canal problem. All the irrigation needs of the Central Valley would be met. We'd have enough water for Los Angeles and San Diego. We would have enough water to partially solve the Colorado River deficit, and we have enough water to fish if we did that. Now, there's only one place that this can be done, and that's at the federal level because of the regulatory nightmare that is here locally. So that is one of my proposals, and that's one of the 4.
Well, I'm going to put this up here.
There are links on the run on this page.
Okay.
There are links there. If you go down halfway, it says water, and a link to that.
Let me hold that up here so they can see that. Yeah, because that interests me, the water, because I've heard so much about water storage and selling the water. So to hear about it possibly being flooding here, that's kind of the opposite.
Well, 1860 was a drought year. 1863 was a drought year. 1861 and 62 we drowned. So these things happen on, you have to plan ahead. So when you have the water, like Dante Nomolini used to say, you ought to store it. And the promise for the Delta was that it would be stored, and it would be pulled in from the coast and stored so that we wouldn't have this deficit in the Delta that we've got.
A lot of people are talking about tearing down what we already have for storage. So I take it you're opposed to that.
Actually, my proposal provides for tearing down Hetch Hetchy in exchange for allowing import of water from the Eel River. Now, the dam on the Eel River would supply enough cold water to improve the fish there. The salmon have a tough time in the summer because there's the flow gets low enough to where the water's too warm.
I should have started this conversation about 20 minutes ago because when you mentioned Hetch Hetchy, it's like, okay, I want another 15 minutes to talk to you, but we got to go. So
you can call me back anytime.
Okay, well, here, we got your phone number. Is your phone still on?
Well, that was a different phone.
Oh, okay. Line 2, huh? Okay, so tell us where we can find you as far as meet and greet is concerned. Because
that's my home phone. That's my email.
Okay.
On the other side, run.htm is my campaign page.
Okay.
On there, it contains all the proposals I'm looking at and considering, and it's my platform. It's about this big. It kind of got out of hand, but that's and my biography is on there also.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Michael, and I look forward to seeing you knock on my door soon.
That would be a problem. When you knock on doors in the country, the dogs eat you.
I have little tiny dogs.
Oh, okay.
Okay, with little tiny teeth. Okay, thanks, Michael.